It is important to note that when we talk about the African diaspora, it must be seen at two levels. Level number one, the descendants of the Africans who left this continent, whose ancestors left the continent and went into the United States of America, into the Caribbean, into Latin America, in Brazil, Colombia, and all those other places. And in the last 6 years, we have also had individuals from different post-colonial African countries who went to the United Kingdom, to different parts of Europe and the United States of America. And you are right in saying that they are to be found as engineers, to be found as doctors, as lawyers, as all the professionals who have succeeded in contributing to the building of the countries which they have adopted as their own. And conservative estimates now tell us that perhaps there is no less than 300 million of Africans in the diaspora. The beauty is that African countries have now recognized that. And I see, number one, the African Union has recognized the African diaspora as the sixth region of the African continent. I've seen individual countries now rename their ministries of foreign affairs as foreign and diaspora affairs. And this is critical. It is critical because it then creates an environment that can be made enabling. And see how deliberate I am. I'm saying can be made enabling. Because thus far in many African countries, the environment has not been enabling. So that countries' representatives go to different parts of the West and wherever Africans are in the diaspora, and they tell them, come back home. And when they come back home, they discover to their chagrin that the environment is hostile for achieving the desired intention, whether it's incorporating a company, whether it's acquisition of land, whether it's obtaining licenses in different areas. And I think that the time is now for African countries to ensure that those who desire to move back into the continent have an enabling environment. If you want your engineers to abandon what they are doing in the United States of America or in Europe and wherever they are in Australia or Canada and to come to Ghana or Kenya or Tanzania, create an environment that will make them achieve what they desire to achieve. If you want your doctors to come here, do the same. And this is something that is achievable, because we have seen other civilizations do it. You were yourself in the diaspora and you made a deliberate decision to come back home. And it's not for the faint-hearted. There are so many hurdles. What is it, we must ask, that the Chinese did, that they were able to attract their young men and women to go back home? What is it that the Japanese did? What is it that the Koreans did? And can we do it? And sometimes I tell my friends in the diaspora that when we tell people to come back, it is not always the case that they'll come back and relocate physically. It is possible to be back by dint of action. There are those who want to come back and stay and do things, but there are those who want to have a meaningful, productive presence in the countries that they choose to come to, whether it's Angola or Namibia, but in the continent of Africa. And I believe that that is urgent. And particularly now, that in the context of Africa Agenda 2063, we say that we want Africans to create a continent that is a middle-level economy. We want to create a continent which trades with ourselves under the aegis of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. This is when we need the expertise of our men and women in the diaspora most. And it is beyond rhetoric by government officials. It is by creating regimes, visa regimes, that will be accommodative, eliminating visa regimes, not by dint of rhetoric, but by dint of creating an environment that is truly facilitative and enabling. What are we going to do? First of all, we've got to look at our policy formulation. What kind of policies do we have in place that is going to give birth to a legal regime that is going to facilitate, and on the ground, have we sensitized our public officials so that when people come, they are received in a manner that will help them to integrate into the system? Because the other thing that one does not want is to create an environment where those in the diaspora come back and they live in a bubble and they attract enmity from the indigents whom they find at home. This is the approach that, in my view, we should work towards, and it has been done before, so we'll not, as the cliche goes, be reinventing the wheel. You must be patriotic, and this is what your typical African politician does, to say, be patriotic, serve your country. But how can you serve your country when you are qualified as a doctor and the statistics say that you need 100 doctors but you can't get employment for 5 years? We need engineers, but an engineer is not employed for 6 years. You need agriculturists, but you are importing goods from Brazil, importing chicken from Brazil. We are not going to stem the flood until we do something in the domestic arena. And it's not only Canada that is doing it. The Europeans now, the Germans are saying we need 500,000 nurses. And they are coming to Africa to take the complete product. The Russians have just announced that they are going to create a visa regime that is going to allow people from different parts of Africa to go to Russia. Perhaps it is the cold that is going to stop people from going to Russia. But it is going to continue as long as the domestic environment does not allow people to thrive. Because Canada is telling our young men and women, come. If you are a doctor, we are going to create an environment that allows you to fulfill yourself professionally, and we are going to pay you a wage that enables you to live in a decent manner. If you are an engineer, we are going to do that with you. If you are an economist, we are going to do that with you. If you are an IT expert, we are going to do that with you. But in our respective domestic arenas, in our 54, 55 odd African countries, the environment is becoming toxic by the day. The opportunities are shrinking by the day. If you look at the things that you need as critical ingredients in industrialization, we are not working to achieve them. Power generation. How are you going to industrialize when the electricity you generate is 5,000 megawatts, while that of South Korea is nearly 100,000 megawatts, while that of places like Canada with a small population is bigger than that of the entire continent of Africa? So you are going to continue to see our young men and women being humiliated at the embassies of European countries and America and Australia and in increasingly Eastern Europe, as long as we don't do something about it. What should we do about it? What we should do about it is that we should bring pressure to bear on African governments and African politicians and bureaucrats to recognize that you cannot grow if you don't have high quality, highly trained labor. Retain your best men and women within the continent, because it is by their retention that you are going to unlock the doors that need to be unlocked. And this is where the diaspora comes in. The diaspora comes in with the expertise. And the diaspora now has the muscle and the wherewithal to compel governments to behave decently. Look at a little country like Israel. If you look at the patents that are registered in Israel through their universities, is much bigger than the entire African continent combined. Because the Jewish diaspora, like them or hate them, whether they are in the United States of America or in South Africa or wherever they are, their true economic north is Tel Aviv or Jerusalem, whichever capital you choose to recognize. But is that true of a Ghanaian in the diaspora, true of a Nigerian in the diaspora, of a Kenyan in the diaspora, of a Zimbabwean in the diaspora? Typically, most people in the diaspora, and even those who are at home, when their children are leaving the continent, they tell them, my son, go ye and never come back. When they come back, it's simply for sentimental and romantic reasons. We want to rise above romanticism and above sentimentalism by engaging our continent in production, in agriculture. When we talk about engaging Africans in production, we mean all sectors. Look at agriculture. Look at the technology that we have in the area of agriculture. Do we engage in agriculture in a manner that is going to ensure that we feed our people across the continent? Look at the dividends of artificial intelligence now. Are we participating in that space in a manner that is going to revolutionize our affairs? Look at communication. Look at engineering. We are now talking about nanotechnology. We are talking about these areas, and the question that we must ask ourselves, even in our universities, are we attracting the kind of men and women who are going to place on the path of research and development? We are not. And that is once again where the diaspora comes in. If look at the people in different parts of Europe and America and in Asia who are engaged in research, but that kind of research does not find its way to the continent of Africa. And I'm talking about the whole idea of having our institutions of higher learning benefiting from the accumulated knowledge that we now have in the diaspora. And this is critical and urgent, because the world is not in the business of waiting. The world is in the business of doing. And this is where the road meets the rubber. And the road in this regard is the policy environment which must be created in the continent of Africa. And the rubber in this regard is the expertise that we have in the diaspora, which will then be combined with the expertise we have domestically. And if we get traction, then I'm telling you, within 30 years maximum, Africa will be in the same space that we see the Koreas. And we don't talk about the Arab countries. During my lifetime, I've seen the Arab countries use the same resource that is to be found in Nigeria, that is to be found in Angola, that is to be found in Mozambique, oil and gas, to catapult themselves into a different orbit. And what have they done? Is to attract labor. They have attracted, the Qataris have attracted labor, the Bahrainis have attracted labor, the Emiratis have attracted labor, the Kuwaitis have attracted labor, the Omanis have attracted labor, and our labor is out there in the diaspora. And they are saying, we want to come back home. But is home welcoming? Is home facilitating? Is home prepared to give them the hand that they need in order to realize their potential? Is home a place that they want to be in the long haul? This is the task that you and me, because we have blamed people and other things for too long, but for how long shall we blame other people? The time is now for us to say, well, it has not been good, but we can do it.